Daiyyah Abdullah earned a master's degree in English from Howard University. Before coming to Montgomery College, she held a position as lecturer at Howard University while pursuing a doctorate at Howard as well. She is a charter member of the International Association of Black Travel Writers and has published in African Diaspora Tourism Magazine, Studies in Travel Writing, and Potomac Review.
Good afternoon, everyone. Okay. For this cohort, I actually used the entire semester to deal with the topic that was the politics of race in the 21st century. I used it for a second-year composition course, EN 102 Techniques in Reading and Writing. And our theme for that particular semester was race, identity, and the representation in the 21st century. Consequently, the entire course was designed around that theme. We had 3 units. The first unit was an introduction to the actual Smithsonian Museums. So at that point, I actually, from listening to a lot of the information from those fellows before me, we concluded that before the students go to the museum, it was really helpful if they knew a lot about the actual exhibit and if we kind of prepared them, so that's what I did. I had 2 mandatory exhibitions that they were supposed to see. That was the Hall of Human Origins and Race Are We So Different. They had an optional museum visits to see Discovering Rastafari, which is no longer there, Sweet and Sour, which is about it was an exhibition about how the restaurants in America, Chinese restaurants, constructed Asian American identity in the United States. Changing Communities and Changing Nation, the Promise of 19th Century America, looked at 3 communities, the African American community, I think it was Irish and Jewish community, and For All the World to See, Visual Culture and the Struggle for Civil Rights, which was exhibition about the civil rights movements and social justice for African Americans. Students being whom they are, most of them stuck with the 2 mandatory museums that they had to know about. A few, I think, looked at Discovering Rastafari, but most of them, when they actually conducted their research, they were on the Hall of Human Origins and the Race Are We So Different exhibition. Unit 2 assignments, they were given a number of summaries, and some of them we actually were given to us as part of our readings for our own fellowship. And then I had a film that came, was a National Geographic film, the Genographic Project, which pretty much set the tone for the class and helped them to understand what we were dealing with. One of my, here we go, Deborah, helped me with this. Okay. And so what I'm showing now is just a little trailer about what the National Geographic Genographic Project was about. Basically, there were these scientists who went through New York City and took DNA. And what they concluded was basically we were all a part of the human family, and it was a Netflix, so it was easy for me to show to the students, and that all of us, based on our DNA, we were pretty much the same. So this is a basic trailer about that particular study that was done.
Dr. Spencer Wells is the director of the Genographic Project, a 5-year effort to collect genetic information to better understand how early humans populated the planet. The $40 million project is funded by the National Geographic Society, IBM, and the Waite Family Foundation. Dr. Wells is a telegenic, self-styled Indiana Jones figure who has spent his career hopscotching the world in search of genetic artifacts, which makes it hard not to refer to him as, well, Indiana Jeans. While it is still in its early stages, Dr. Wells says the information gathered has already borne fruit.
One of the things we've been looking at actively is, over the last year or so, Africa. What happened in Africa before we started to leave? And what routes did we take when we started to leave? And what about possible back migrations? We're looking at evidence of those perhaps 30,000 years ago or so from the Middle East.
Perhaps not surprisingly, these clues are of great interest to scientists outside the field of population genetics. Ian Tattersall is the curator of anthropology at the American Museum of Natural History.
We don't know a great deal from the fossil record, the traditional source of information about human history, not very well documented in terms of the exodus of people from Africa and their spread around the world. So this is a really exciting way of getting a grip on this.
Dr. Wells is quick to point out that his research depends a great deal upon the work of scientists from numerous other disciplines.
Obviously, this field doesn't operate in isolation, so we as geneticists are able to say uniquely who's related to who. But to make
So basically, to make a long story short, what this particular scientist does is conclude that based on their study, that all human DNA stems from Africa. So that's basically where we started. And then he goes on to show in this particular documentary how migration because of drought or the ice age, how people changed mainly because of this. So it was very controversial, and that was kind of what started the students out. So that was kind of interesting, what we concluded thereafter. I'm having problems with this clicker. So we look at the film, and then we go to the museum. The Hall of Human Origins pretty much takes the same kind of position that the Genographic film does, that all humans are pretty much the same. Unit 2, at that point, we're actually now moving from learning about the exhibitions and now dealing with our terms. We are defining race, we're defining identity, and we're defining representation. We're doing literature reviews, and we begin to do a Rogerian argument on affirmative action that basically for us demonstrates that the issues in the United States in terms of race and identity still continue to be to influence our politics and our legal system. Unit 3 was basically the culminating activity where we worked on a research paper. So everything that we've done up until then is really information that we're gathering for the research paper, the literature reviews, the summaries, all of that. To help us once we get there, I show a film, Skin, that is a drama about a lady in South Africa who comes out dark and black, and both parents are white. And throughout the film, and this is based on Sandra Lang, a real-life person, her identity changes a number of times legally. So at that point, we're talking about what really is race, what really is identity, because this child looks black, both parents are white. They have no idea that they may have, there's nothing that ever indicates that they have, as they say, colored people in their background. And she's white until she goes to school, and because of the other parents saying that she's colored, the school has her reclassified as colored. Then her father works with, again, and has her reclassified as white, and then someone else comes and has her reclassified as colored. And then the country has a law where they say if both parents are white, then the children, the offsprings are white as well. So at that point, we're talking about how the legal identity definitions of race and how fluid race is, you know. Even in terms of the students are bringing in their stories about how, what a difference a border makes, you know, because I talked to them about this idea from Alizair Pettinger, who's a travel researcher on travel narratives, and narratives indicate that as we cross borders, so does our race, and so do our identities. And so we talk a little bit about that. So my clicker, I'm sorry. I don't want to show race, I want to go to the, there we go. Basically, these are the prompts I had for my paper. All of them indicate that the students are supposed to analyze either one exhibit or a particular display from one of the exhibits, and to indicate how the Smithsonian represents race and how possibly those representations affect our popular views in terms of race and identity. And then for those who had a lot of problems, because there were some, especially with the human origins, we had people who, students because of religious views, you know, creation theory, I gave them 2 prompts to work with, and we just asked the question, does race matter? And then I gave a prompt for anybody who disagrees with any aspect of one or more of the exhibitions implied or stated definition of race and identity. They could respond to that too, because all of us have different ways of looking at life. I just wanted to lastly look at a few of the, and these were taken at random, and actually they were the first 3 papers that I picked up, and these are sample thesis statements from the research papers. Just to kind of give an idea, many of the students thought it was easier just to deal generally with the question of does race matter, and consequently many of them did. But here's 3. And as I said, these are thesis statements for the argumentative research papers. Number 1, the typical notion of race as identity, I did no editing on these so that you can hear the student's voice, as a biophysical characteristic impedes people's concept of identity. Okay, secondly, the real issue in question we must ask is, does race really matter? The term race does matter in terms of affirmative action and representation. However, race does not construct one's identity. Lastly, throughout the years, race has been examined through its history, effects in society, and effects in education, only to conclude that regardless of the attempts to reach equality, race will always be a discriminating factor in society. This is kind of representative of what many of the students wanted to say about race. And I really had to control them because they liked engaging that question, does race matter? But the initial outlines for many of those research papers, the students were actually beginning to write papers that would address the question, should race matter? That was not the question. And so it was a lot of work to redirect them back to the research question, does it matter? Not should it matter? Because it was easy for them to say, no, it does not matter, but for them to actually look at our society and to say. So that was pretty much it. It was an interesting experience. I did actually do this course twice, for the summer 2011 and for the fall 2011. And I will probably use the Smithsonian quite a bit for many of my papers thereafter. Thank you. Did I go over time?
We do have the ability to take a few questions from the audience. How do we do this? Okay. Anyone have a question they would like to pose for Daiyyah?
Yes, ma'am. Mm-hmm. Questions? Oh.
Hi. Is
Hi,
it
how are
working?
you?
Okay, so I have the question of this was in the context of your English 102 class.
Yes.
So my question to you is the outline that you would generally follow for your class before you did the fellowship, were you still able to cover kind of the fundamentals that you needed to cover in the course?
I covered everything.
Okay.
Because the thing about a writing class, it's like, and I put this in my report, it's like the whole world opens up for you to explore through the pen. So I'm using all of the outcomes because I didn't want to, you know, I think for ours I did the long version, only had 10 minutes. But I didn't post my outcomes, but everything, we worked with argumentation, pre-writing. They still had to have peer reviews, they had to have outlines. And so we just did papers and we just explored, and every time you have a paper that you assign, if it's not a free, you know, if the assignment is not free for them to choose their particular topics, then you have to give them writing prompts, and they choose. And if you're giving them writing prompts, then most of the time we're preparing them for that. So I think that the only thing that I probably did a little differently was in terms of giving them research.
I see.
As opposed
Yeah.
to leading them towards research. We actually did give them a lot of the articles that they were to use. I did that. One of the things that I thought really was better about this course than my others is that because we used the same theme throughout the course, by the time they got to the research paper, they really, really didn't know their topic. And they were really clear about what they wanted to work on. And even those students who had a lot of problems with the Genographic project, indicating that all human beings stem from Africa. That was very, very controversial,
Yeah.
and we talked a lot about that. And and most of the students had a problem, regardless of their race. They really, really did not see all human beings stemming from Africa. It was very emotional, positions that they made. They didn't care about the research. They just said, I don't see it. I can't see it.
Additional questions?
Hi, guys.
Hi.
I just wanted to ask you the difference between teaching, using the Smithsonian Project in the summer, which we know is so short and fast, and using it in a regular semester. How did it work in? And
Actually, I taught that one first, and it was the one that kind of gave me my confidence. I have to say that a lot of that had to do with the students. I had that summer probably in a class of, I guess, about 5 transfer students who were taking university, 4-year university courses somewhere. I had a couple of guys from the military. I had a class that had an average age of 26 to 33. So it was a very mature class, and it was like I just gave them everything, and they just kind of, went for it. And even though it was kind of truncated, it was not that much different in terms of quantity of work that I did. I was not able to spend as much time on the work in terms of all of the preliminary. There I pretty much said, okay, here's the deadline. You create an outline of this or that and the other. And that was it. Whereas in the regular classroom, it's okay, today we're going to work on the outline. Today we're going to work on the thesis statement. So it's a little different. Okay. Okay. Thank you.